Oh, you gotta get up right now. You gotta get up. You gotta get up right now. Come on. Get up. Get up.
So after what happened at the end of episode 5, it really would have been easy to think Teddy was going to be Franklin's biggest threat in episode 6. In an eye for an eye, Franklin killed Teddy's father, and Teddy did start to make his moves of his own to try and stop more bloodshed with Ruben. But it was easy to see why Franklin wanted to keep Sissy safe at the projects. He knows Teddy's gonna come, and it's only a matter of time before he does. But the immediate threat wasn't Teddy McDonald. It was Kane who kidnapped Louis, and a rescue attempt by Franklin, Jerome, Leon, and Scully ended badly for Uncle Jerome.
I ain't looking for no goddamn fight. I'm telling you, I'm goddamn done. I'm done selling crack. I'm done getting shot at. I'm done trying to kill my goddamn family.
Jerome wanted out of the business, he wanted out of the game, and he wanted to go to Jamaica and live a life Leon once did. And you could tell he was sick of this life that only ends up in death or jail, and he was ready to leave. And so now it really is going to come down to a blame game of who's responsible for Jerome's death. At the beginning of Snowfall, Franklin's transformation was actually once helped by Louis. We saw a young Franklin Saint come to Jerome who refused to get into the game, which is full of consequences. Consequences he suffered in Season 6, Episode 6. But with these bricks in Franklin's bag, Louis knocked on Franklin's window, and Louis was the one who convinced Jerome to start looking beyond weed, and the rest is history. Now, at the end of episode 5, both Cassandra and Veronique were shocked at what they saw Franklin do to Teddy's father, and so we pick up with Cassandra telling Veronique, do not go back to LA with Franklin. She knows who Franklin is, and she doesn't want Veronique to suffer when Teddy comes after them, because believe me, he will, which is why Franklin is also taking extra precautions. After Franklin killed Teddy's father, not only does that put a target on his back, it puts a target on his family's back. So later when he was back in LA, he met up with Leon, Wanda, and Sissy to warn them Teddy's going to be coming after them after he killed his father. But one thing Leon isn't worried about is Teddy stepping foot in the projects, and he said they look after Sissy. But this cat and mouse game has completely shifted after Franklin's latest move, because it's gone from Franklin looking for Teddy and his money to now Teddy looking for him, as bad as Franklin is. So Teddy will definitely want revenge, but Franklin's doing everything he can to get the upper hand, which is where Gustavo comes in. Now despite Gustavo working for Teddy, as well as spying on him for the DEA, and also having Ruben approach him from the KGB, Gustavo chooses to side with Franklin, and that's because he offered him 10 million. Gustavo's main worry now is his family. He wants to keep them safe at all costs, and the only way he can do that is with money and fake passports, but more importantly, making sure Teddy is dead, because he knows Teddy will come after him as soon as he realizes he's flipped. Whether Teddy realizes before it's too late, who knows, but Franklin did promise he will kill Teddy, because nothing will get in the way of Franklin and his money. But at some stage, Franklin and Teddy will come face to face once again, but will Franklin get his money, and will Gustavo survive? Now, following the end of episode 5, we saw Jerome leaving the club in the midst of a war with Kane, and you got the sense he was ready to go. He wanted a battle and he wanted Kane's people to come for him. So we had a very worried Louis who was stressing about Jerome still being out in the open after he said he was done with the game. But Jerome pulls up completely drunk, and he does reiterate he still wants out the game, but this time he's heading to Jamaica. Now the money that they've made, the violence, the death, but mainly the fact he was at odds with his own family, was a driving force with him wanting to leave the game. Unfortunately, Louis had a big hand to play in the Saint family being torn in two, and she really isn't ready to walk away from her empire. So similar to Franklin Saint, Louis' journey has somewhat mirrored Franklin's, but she says sorry for the current position they're in, and how she never knew going over Franklin's head to Teddy would create a war with their nephew, but worse, how Teddy would steal Franklin's money.
I've been asking myself why I couldn't just be happy with where we were, because we have money, right? Power, respect.
So people are in this game for different reasons. Some like the money, some like the power that comes with it, others want respect. But all three of these traits are intertwined. When you make that money, you gain a sense of power and respect. But Louis doesn't feel that respect. She feels that her creating this empire has always been overlooked by others, just giving credit and respect to Jerome. But is that such a bad thing? Sometimes it is good to be in the shadows, and in essence, a ghost in a drug empire you've created. So you've distanced yourself from the violence that comes with it. But you can tell Louis has a need for respect. She wants people to see that she was the one who built this empire. Just like Franklin Saint once said, I built this shit. Now, even if Louis did want out the game, she couldn't because she made promises to Teddy, and she's also afraid of what Teddy would do if she just up and disappeared, because their money is stuck in Panama. But let's not forget, Franklin did warn Louis, if Teddy did this to him, then what do you think he's gonna do to you? But her answer in season 5 was, she'll take her chances. Now this conversation was then interrupted by a page from Scully, who was looking for his re-up. But with Louis' mind all over the place, Jerome goes instead, and Louis goes to clear her mind by taking a ride on her horse. By the riding grounds were Kane's men, who have been camped day and night just waiting for that opportunity to take Louis alive. Louis was then taken to Kane. Now Kane gave the news to Franklin that he's got a surprise for him, but while he waited for Franklin's arrival, he was trying to get the information out of her in regards to who the cop was who put him in hospital, but Louis stays strong. Failing to convince Louis to talk, Kane warns Louis that he's got a bunch of hungry men that have just been released from prison, and they've not been with a woman in a long time. But again, Louis stays strong. Now when Franklin Saint turned up, Kane resorted to other means to try and get Louis to talk, but when that failed, he let Franklin talk to Louis, who did warn, give Kane what he was looking for, because what Kane was planning was worse than a bullet. But again, Louis refuses to talk. Now Franklin pages Uncle Jerome, who at the time was with Scully, and it actually took Leon reaching out to Jerome to get his attention. And when he was made aware of the situation at hand, we all knew what was coming next. Jerome with Scully meets Franklin and Leon at a warehouse, but tension is sky high because they've been on opposite sides of the gun for a long time. But the tension between Jerome and Franklin wasn't the only thing during this meeting. Notice how the camera panned towards Leon and Scully, who locks eyes for the first time since Leon accidentally killed his daughter Tiana. But after this exchange was done, they created a plan to rescue Louis, and we saw them execute, but with one fatal casualty. Now Franklin enters Kane's compound where his men failed to check his car, and hidden in the back was Uncle Jerome. Now before Franklin starts a war with Kane's men, you hear the screams from Louis as she's moments away from being sexually assaulted. But this is where Franklin springs into action, taking out a few of Kane's men, which alerts Kane, who grabs Louis. Face to face for the first time, Kane and Jerome are at an impasse. Kane wants Jerome to lower his gun and let him walk out of the room, or Louis gets the first bullet, but Jerome rejects, and when Louis ducks, both of them fire. Down goes Kane, but down also goes Uncle Jerome, and what made this scene even more sad was Franklin walking in and saying "Unc." He sits down in disbelief while tears come down his face. So as Jerome's death begins to hit home for Louis and the rest of the Saint family, who do you guys think Louis will blame for her husband's death? It's of course going to be Franklin Saint, who actually came to help save Louis's life. But Louis was the one who couldn't hold her ego back, and she even admitted this to Jerome in episode 6. But no doubt, this is a death that will only ignite the fire between Louis and Franklin Saint once again. Now elsewhere, I do have to say, Teddy meeting Ruben, I found it strange that Teddy was willing to accept a drink at the hands of Ruben. He very well knows he's a trained KGB agent, and who knows what he could have put in that drink before he handed it over to Teddy. So I don't know if this was mind games from Teddy or just utter stupidity, because you can never tell with Teddy McDonald. But that's a breakdown of Snowfall Season 6, Episode 6, and the end of the line for Jerome. Louis' greed and going behind Franklin's back to Teddy and wanting to expand ends in losing Uncle Jerome, and this was always going to end in a death for the Saint family. It was the only one thing that was going to stop them from being at each other's throats. Louis' kidnapping may have brought them together for a short while, but unfortunately, this was always going to end in Jerome's death. And now I think we're going to see Louis taking this out on Franklin Saint. So drop all your thoughts down below on Snowfall Season 6, Episode 6. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.